Hello subscribers and not subscribers, and welcome back to another episode of ChäoS. Let's go ahead and put it up. And I'm fairly certain this is actually what's supposed to be going up. Realistically speaking, I probably should have confirmed that before starting to record this, but I didn't. See, yep, it looks like okay, yeah, it's definitely supposed to be ChäoS. Okay, let me go ahead and pull up my clock, start the timer, and load the save. When I leapt awake, I was atop the bed, unchanged. My heart was pounding in alarm. My heart was still inside my chest, right where it belonged. I tried touching my body here and there. It wasn't flimsy. It had remained three-dimensional. I didn't see Sarah anywhere. Of course she wasn't there.
夢か。
Had it been a good one or a bad one? I unconsciously let out a sigh. It had unfolded the same way as Buracha do Shinji by Circle Piruporo, I guess, I'd bought before. In other words, I'd made it the basis of my fantasizing. Why hadn't I realized that in the middle of my dream? I understood that it was called a dream precisely because one wouldn't notice such things in it, but I couldn't help wondering.
西条さん
Someone called me from behind the curtain. It soon opened, and the nurse from before, Hazuki, stuck her face in.
おはようございます
Wow. Okay. I lowered my eyes and wordlessly bowed my head to her.
結局3時間ぐっすりでしたね
Eh? It already been 3 hours? Oh, okay, I was thinking it was longer. Because she said good morning, I was thinking, oh, okay, apparently he slept the entire night there. Or pretty much the entire day, actually, really. I lost my sense of the passage of time, thanks to having such a richly flavored dream, but I must have been pretty worn out.
少しうなされていたみたいですけど大丈夫
I couldn't tell her I had been having a sexy dream. Speaking of which, I was embarrassed by my full-blown libido.
でも無遊病の症状は結局出ませんでしたよ
Hazuki told me in a tone of voice meant to reassure me.
まあ今日はたまたま症状が出なかっただけかもしれないから無遊病でないっていう断定はできないですけど
So, have him do this for a couple more days? No, I'm not a sleepwalker. More importantly, I had to ask Dr. Takashina my key question. But I didn't see him anywhere. Hazuki handed me a one-sheet document. When I accepted it absent-mindedly and skimmed it, it turned out to be formatted as a questionnaire.
それはあなたの心理状態を把握するためのチェックシートです心理テストのようなものねそれを書いてくれたら今日はもう帰っていいって先生が
先生は
ごめんなさい。ずっと診察が続いてて。来週まで様子を見て、まだ改善が見られないようならもう一度来てくださいって。
Well, it's not like he's my personal doctor. He must have given Hazuki various instructions about what to do with me. This meant there had been no meaning in my coming all the way out to the hospital. I'd wanted to ask him about my petrifying symptoms, or about how I was being manipulated by someone outside myself. And that said, with Hazuki looking at me so apologetically, I didn't have the bravery to demand take me to Dr. Takashina. Helpless, I ended up filling out the checklist she'd handed me. I'd write about the symptoms that were plaguing me on the back of the page, and I'd come to see him again next week.
チェックシートは質問に対してイエスかノーかだけを答える簡単なものですから。当てはまる点があったらイエスにチェックしてくださいね。今後の西條さんの治療に対する参考にしますから、じっくり考えて答えてください。
Hazuki went out of her way to explain it to me thoroughly. Among the items on the sheet were ones so strange that they didn't seem to belong there in the context of a standard hospital. It really was like a psychological test. Would they actually be able to understand anything based on my answers to questions like this? Hazuki watched me unwaveringly. She didn't move to leave. It didn't feel like she had too much time to spare, more like she was observing me. No, watching over me. My nervousness at being watched made it hard for me to think. Was this also part of her job as a nurse? For the time being, I decided to hurry up and get it over with. Oh, okay. Let's see. You prefer email to using the phone, I guess. Your ears occasionally start ringing. Nah. You have sensed someone's gaze and then turned around. Nah. You have seen inanimate objects briefly appear to be moving. No. You've experienced premonitions. No, I wouldn't say. At times when you look at a digital clock, all the numbers are the same. Nope. You've cried at least once in the past month. No. You can reach orgasm solely through the strength of your imagination. Okay, they've got some interesting questions here. You can picture things even without closing your eyes. You can sometimes see people's faces in the windshield of your car. Oh, I missed this one. Nothing interrupts your fantasy while you are masturbating. Okay, yeah, like I said, they got some interesting questions here. You have a hard time going to the bathroom after watching a horror movie. I'm not a fan of horror movies anyway, so I can't quite answer that one. You can't handle being in a haunted house. I guess, yeah, sure, why not? When you read books, you become so immersed that you forget what time it is. Not really, I'm not much of a book person. You believe there are planets aside from Earth that play host to humanoid creatures. Well, I wouldn't say I believe that, but I certainly wouldn't really complain if that were the case. The personality stereotypes based on your blood type fit you perfectly. Well, I don't know the personality stereotypes based on my blood type. It especially doesn't help that I don't necessarily remember my blood type often because I don't really need to know it half the time. You easily get motion sickness in vehicles. No. You believe in the existence of God. No. You are good at sensing ghosts. No. While sleeping, you sometimes dream in full color. Yeah, I don't remember my dreams. While sleeping, there have been times when you knew you were in a dream. No. You have experienced the loss of parts of your memory. Not really. You dislike looking people in the eye. Not really. Looking at a dried plum is enough to make your mouth full of saliva. Well, I've never looked at a dried plum, so I can't answer that one. You have the feeling that yawns are contagious. Sure, why the hell not? I know most times when people start yawning, everybody in the room seems to start yawning. So why not? And that's that.
はい、お疲れ様でした。
We only checked 3. Wonder how that's gonna work out. That really doesn't really help them answer any questions, I would say. Really, you need 3 options. You need yes, no, or not sure. Though I hadn't said anything, Hazuki spoke to me at exactly the same time I finished marking the last statement. Did she, just rip it out of your hand? Because I could see that probably being the case. Because she was just kind of standing there like, finish it, damn it. I was mortified that she'd watched me the whole time. Maybe my face had started turning red. Which was why I meekly returned the checklist without looking in Hazuki's direction. I didn't have enough time to write down my symptoms on the back of the page.
それでは、待合室でお待ちください。お薬が出てますから。
薬?
I don't think any of those questions that I put checks to are really going to do anything. I was getting medicine? Dr. Takashina hadn't said a word to that effect, but, yeah, no, a lot of the times when you go to the hospital, don't be surprised if you get medicine. Even if you just go to a clinic, don't be surprised if they go and say, yeah, you need this medicine.
ええ、 先生の指示で。弱い精神安定剤です。ぐっすり眠れるようになるし、副作用などもありませんよ。
Now that I have a hard time believing. I'm sure there are side effects. They're just really not significant enough to really warrant informing people of them, unless they feel like looking at the label. I see. How like him. How considerate. But I became depressed at the prospect of having to wait in the lobby again. Well, she said waiting room, not lobby, but I guess they decided to switch up the wording there. It was evening by the time I returned to Shibuya. The hospital was technically part of Shibuya, but situation-wise, Yoyogi was closer, so taking the train was the fastest way to get there. But the Yamanote line was as packed as always, and though I had to ride only past 2 stations, this round trip alone wore me out a lot. It'd be agonizing to take the train any farther, so I got off at Shibuya Station and walked back to my base. For all that, there were too many people in front of the station. I hate huge crowds. They make my head spin. I hate huge crowds too. They don't make my head spin though, but I hate them too. Not wanting to stay any longer than I had to, I tried to cross the pedestrian scramble. But it took a big effort just to walk in a straight line here. If I swayed even a tiny bit, I'd bump into the people passing me and overtaking me. Plus, people handing out free tissues kept getting in the way, forcing pocket-sized tissue packs at me. Sick and tired of it. I ignored the first guy, but the second one turned out to be a rather cute lady, so I took hers. Those tissue distributors are a serious hassle. Don't stand smack in the middle of the street like that. Well, but I'd go ahead and take them since they're free. Except for the first one. The first one you decided, no, I'm not going to take his. The tissue pack I'd taken had come with a flyer, which consisted solely of white letters on a background of red paper. Interesting that they chose red paper. It was pretty freaky looking. You don't see this kind of color usage all that often. I read it nonchalantly as I walked. It was a blood donation flyer. Reading it, I recalled the checklist I'd filled out at the hospital earlier. Let's see. Supplies of type B blood are currently inadequate. The demand for transfusions far exceeds Shibuya's supply of type B blood. At this rate, it will become terribly difficult to something amounts of blood to those who need it. And in the worst case scenario, some may die. And then can't really read much of the rest of it, although I see something... Without your cooperation, yada yada yada. By all means, be sure to stop by the blood donation, yada yada yada. Something about, what is that? Inolasha? Or something like that? I don't know. Can't really read it. It's blurred. I couldn't remember filling out something like that 40 years ago. Maybe their diagnostic methods changed recently. Yet, for some reason, the checklist seemed familiar. Deja vu. All I'd felt lately was deja vu. It made me sick. The fact that my own mind and body wouldn't act the way I wanted them to. I dug through my memory in hopes of somehow being able to pin down the source of this deja vu. The days when my mother took me to the hospital every week, I kept my mouth shut at all times and indicated where my will lay solely by nodding or shaking my head. At first, they had looked at me in a regular examining room, but when I showed no signs of getting better, they eventually started taking me to another room. It was what you'd call a counseling room, with a sofa and lots of stuffed animals lying around, a space with one goal, to make a patient relax. Without blaming anyone, Dr. Takashina persevered in trying to treat me. He was the only one who noticed that it wasn't that I couldn't speak, it was simply that I chose not to. My mother talked to me about all kinds of things in a falsely bright voice. Dr. Takashina always greeted me with a refreshing smile. The nurses were nice to me too, and I had the feeling that there had always been one more person in the room. Right. He wore a solid black suit, which was very odd since we were in a hospital. He was always silent, like me, and I never even heard his voice. At the end, I couldn't find out anything about him. His behavior and atmosphere wasn't like a hospital physician, and he always stood off by himself, gazing out the window. I'd eternally called him Nozomi, not because he'd said it was his name.
のぞみ
The suit-clad man always wore a small badge on his chest. The word Nozomi was inscribed there, but since it had the design of a logo, it couldn't have been his name tag. That aside, what was this Nozomi? The only certainty that it must be the name of a corporation.
のぞみさんっていう美人女社長が設立したカウンターテロ組織とかへへ漫画みたいだ
Oh, we are back at base, more or less. Now we're actually back at base. When I got back to my base, I immediately ran an online search for Nozomi in Deludi. But a ton of results came out, and I had no way to narrow them down to one. Well, thinking about it normally, Nozomi could be the employee who had the aforementioned checklist, or maybe a salesman who had come to the hospital with his wares, that kind of thing. And lately, they'd finally started to make use of his stuff, including the sheet they'd had me fill out today. Nah, the chances that were... The chances of that were pretty damn slim. I'd never heard of them letting an outsider like that sit in on a patient's session. In the end, who or what had Nozomi been? I got fed up once again at the emergence of these nagging memories. Whatever the case, I'd identified the source of my deja vu. Next week, I decided I would consult with Dr. Takashina about my memory issue. After seeing him, I'd shut myself up again and stop going to school. I couldn't go to school, not when it was full of people trying to hurt me. Truthfully, I didn't really want to get my minimum attendance shift chart too messed up, but it wasn't worth dying for. I stopped running searches about Nozomi and began browsing for interesting-looking threads on @channel. The news board consisted mostly of, or almost entirely of new-gen related stuff. I completely lost my patience when I completely lost my patience when even the Ensu board turned out to have threads like, "Let's try reenacting the new-gen murders in Ensu." Grim was there when I went to wallow in Ensu. Oh, okay. It wanted me to type. Okay. Or it wanted me to move on to the next thing. Let's see. @channel's news board had gotten pretty boring lately, or has gotten pretty boring lately. All anyone ever talks about is the new-gen stuff. Yeah, because it's the biggest thing going on right now. Epic threads spring up all over the place every time there's a new incident. I do find it interesting that now the oldest post is at the bottom and the newest is at the top. I'm kind of used to the reverse because that's usually the way it is. They haven't caught the perp yet? Ha! Come on, the police are powerless. Some of these idiots online are portraying the perp as a moe bishoujo, I guess. LOL. That demon girl. I flinched as the dim eyes of the girl I'd spotted at the scene of the staking murder grazed my brain. I didn't want to keep remembering it like this, but the second I let my guard down, the ominous memories came flooding back. Yeah, I had seen the criminal's face. I knew who she was. Should I have reported her to the police? But I didn't want to get caught up in it. Demon girl? They've made that kind of version too? But hey, that's in pretty poor taste. Anyway, I'm telling you, the new gen cases are really interesting. I joined a new gen community, I guess it's supposed to be shorthand for community, in Furipara? I guess. You're addicted. You and Silverfish Sis are the only ones in our guild who haven't joined, man. Seriously? That meant I wouldn't be able to jump in on the conversation when we are all chatting. But you would be able to jump in on the conversation. Just so long as the conversation has nothing to do with the New Gen murders. New Gen isn't run of the mill. It gives me chills. I knew you were into Guro stuff. Timer just went off. But don't tell me you're the type to see murders as works of art. To be fair, I had mistaken the staked up body of an objet d'art. So if I were forced to put it one way or the other, then yeah, maybe it did have artistic qualities. Nah, I look for the really twisted stuff instead. The ultimate S&M type stuff. You're hopeless. Better do something about yourself, quick. Nightheart, pop your cherry and you'll come to understand it too. You ass, you mean to say you're not a virgin? And yeah, we're gonna go and throw in emoticons that, honestly, very few people will probably, well, at least in the West, would be able to understand. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't really know what this one looks like it's probably supposed to be crying. Or something like that. Can't quite say about this one. Maybe it's supposed to be like a cheering or something, but I don't really see what looks like it's supposed to be arms. That clearly is, generally speaking, the head. So I don't know. A pig? Maybe a pig's face? Maybe. You traitor! Setting that aside, the new Gen Wiki is seriously packed with stuff. Go give it a look, dude. I don't want to see it, because it's terrifying. I'd wanted to escape the reality that I'd witnessed the scene of a crime. With that one goal in mind, I'd gone on blocking out every piece of new gen-related news. By doing so, I'd hoped to convince myself that the gruesome spectacle I'd seen had been an illusion. But in Ensu, I was on the same level as a god. It wasn't enough merely to be strong. I also had to know about everything or anything and everything. To say nothing of the fact that I was the closest thing our guild had to a leader. As the person in charge of getting everyone organized, it'd be way too humiliating if I couldn't keep up with their conversations. I had to avoid that. I headed over to the wiki Grimm had told me about. The title New Gen Wiki was displayed in huge letters on the homepage. Compilation sites like this are an example of a type of wiki where an indeterminate number of people post news and information about a specified topic. A New Gen Wiki like this was bound to be fairly fast moving, with all kinds of people posting stuff related to the New Gen cases. Unworthy or untrustworthy information and flaming were mixed in, but it was convenient because of how easy it made it to understand the big picture. There were a lot of links pasted in too. I started by reading one called A Timeline Up to the Present. My heart started beating faster. I was nervous. Even though all I was doing was reading a website, the palms of my hands were soaked in sweat. In the first incident, commonly known as the group dive, 5 co-ed high schoolers committed suicide together. I guess that's supposed to be September 7th, approximately a month ago, in the middle of the night, at Shibuya's Cornelius Tower. They leapt from the heliport on top of the building and died instantaneously. Well, no shit, they jumped off the heliport on top of a tower. It'd be a miracle if they managed to survive, if you do ask me. Autopsies revealed that each of them had scratch marks and foreign bits of flesh under their fingernails. It was then theorized that they had been holding each other's hands when they jumped off. There was nothing resembling a will or a suicide note left behind on the roof. By going to Cornelius Tower in person, an online personality, known as Snake, discovered that only employees were given access to the rooftop. and that the door leading there was particularly always bolted shut, or practically always bolted shut, whatever. Naturally, it was also locked at the time of the incident. The key to the roof had not been found among any of the 5 victims' belongings. In short, circumstances suggested that the rooftop heliport had been sealed to entry, and it remained completely unclear as to how the 5 students had gotten in. There was a high possibility that someone, aside from those 5, had been present at the time of the incident. The second case, commonly known as the pregnant man, occurred on September 19th, 12 days after the first case. Early in the morning, a college student going home after karaoke sighted a blood-drenched male corpse in the area near the underside of the Shibuya Station overpass. The man, Kono Shizuo, I guess, was enrolled in a Shibuya area college, and though he had already died by the time his body was discovered, his abdomen had become unnaturally swollen. According to the autopsy, someone had cut open his abdomen, shoved a newborn fetus into his stomach, and sewn him back together. A DNA analysis established that the first victim and the fetus were not blood relatives. The victim was unmarried and had not been carrying on any relationships with women. Online speculators believe that since the fetus had been approximately 32 weeks old, it must have been removed from its mother's body via C-section. But no one knew who the mother was, where she could have found, or what she was doing at present, or even whether she was alive or dead. Perhaps the police had tracked down her whereabouts, but at the very least, they hadn't announced it to the public. Yeah. On the verge of vomiting, I turned my eyes away from the monitor. How revolting! The perpetrator had to be insane. And on top of all that, to think that this vicious murder, might have been committed by that girl. Japan is over. I stared at Sarah to help my eyes recover. Somehow I managed to stabilize my mental state. I had thought about taking the medicine Dr. Takashina had given me, but it looked like I could still succeed in getting by with just Sarah. But it was enough to have read stuff this guru, even for the sake of preserving my reputation as Nightheart.
そんなに辛いならさ、読まなくていいって。タッキーがド M ってんなら別に止めないけど、辛そうなタッキーは見てられないさ。もうやめよう。いつもみたく私にハーハーしてもいいからさ。
Sarah was so kind to me. Sarah was like the only one who would stay as my ally, as expected, since she was my wife. I rested my chin on my hand and took deep breaths as I gazed at Sarah's smile. I could feel her healing me. If I kept an eye on Sarah as I read, maybe I would be able to hold out a little longer. I decided to put this into practice without delay. Okay, we're gonna get to go and read even more fairly gruesome stuff. For starters, why had the 2 cases without any common features whatsoever been collectively labeled New Gen and treated like the same thing? The group dive had initially been treated solely as if the victims had committed suicide. After the pregnant man incident, however, people online reinvestigated the group dive, and once they discovered the unnatural circumstances surrounding it, maybe they were killed in such a way as to make it look like suicide, began to spread around as a new explanation. The parents and close friends of the 5 who died in the group dive kept saying that there was no way they would have ever committed suicide. At that point, the mass media seized on the fact that both cases had occurred in Shibuya and began using new generation madness in their sensationalistic headlines, which was said to be how it all got started. And then the third incident, the one I had witnessed, commonly known as the staking homicide. Since few days had passed since the case opened, the wiki site didn't contain a lot of information on it yet. About all that had been made public was that the victim was Ota Hisashi, a 56-year-old college professor, and that the murderer had used stakes to pin his corpse to the concrete wall of an abandoned house. Residents of the neighborhood where the crime took place reported hearing a sound like someone hammering, starting at around 8 p.m., the time when the murder was estimated to have been committed, and lasting for over an hour. I'd heard it as well. It had clung to my ears, a nasty sound. On a side note, no connection between it and the group dive or the pregnant man had been uncovered yet. However, since it was the third bizarre incident to happen in the very same Shibuya, people naturally started treating the staking murder case as a part of the new gen phenomenon. The police and the media viewed the three cases having been the work of different people. But according to online commentary, or more popularly, online expectations, them having been committed by the same criminal or by the same group of people was the most popular explanation. It seemed like a lot of places online also gave it occult explanations, and some believed that everything stemmed back to the earthquake 2 months earlier. 2 months ago, a magnitude 3.0 earthquake had occurred, with Shibuya at its center. 8 people died, despite the fact that it had been a relatively small-scale event, and as a result, it became a big topic of conversation. Now that they mentioned it, true enough, the new gen cases had begun after that earthquake. Thus, the people who supported an occult explanation for new gen argue that the 8 deaths from the earthquake should be counted as the first new gen incident, which led to fierce debates between them and those who supported the most popular explanation, the same criminal theory. In any case, the truly abnormal part of it was that though 3 brutal crimes had occurred in succession, no clue as to the perpetrator's identity had been discovered in any of them. And many online voices were eager for a 4th incident to take place. Of course they are. If I hadn't been involved, I would doubtlessly have joined in on the festival, and maybe I would have been waiting with bated breath for a 4th case. Damn it. Those bastards sure have it easy.
犯人を早く捕まえてくれよ。
Over a week had passed since the staking, but neither that demon girl nor the police had showed any signs of movement. If they were aware that I'd been in the area, surely the police would at least have come to question me. But at the moment, they didn't seem to be doing anything about it. Thank goodness. Looks like I'm not going to get dragged into it.
あなたには予知能力がありますか?
The words Yua had thrust at me passed through my head.
予知能力があるって思わなきゃ納得できないような画像データをあなたが持っていたから。
I had been feeling reassured, but 1 second was all it took to send me right back into my gloom. The image Shogun had transmitted to me. Even now, it lingered inside my PC as data. What Yua had told me was just the product of her own delusions. It was too incoherent to hold together logically. I hadn't gone to ask about it at the hospital today, but it didn't make any sense for me to be acting differently, unbeknownst to myself, during the gaps in my memory. It had never happened before, not even once. Which was why that Guro pic totally had to be composite.
だったらさ、合成だって証拠を見つけちゃえばいいさ。あの画像解析しちゃおうよ。
But it made me sick, so I didn't want to look at it very much.
あの女をロー としちゃえば、タッキーはもう怯えることなく平穏な生活に戻れるんだよ。やるしかないっしょ。
True enough, it's just as you say. You talked about it like like I was the perpetrator of the staking, but that was out of the question. Because I myself had seen the perp's face, like I'd let you force guilt for the crime on me. I sucked in a sharp breath and double-clicked the folder where the image should have been cached. Oh, okay, there we go. I was about to say I'm going to cut this here. Okay, well, that's that for now. As always, like, for comment, subscribe, share, and I will see you guys next time. But until then, goodbye and farewell.